The movie begins with a man named Derek walking into an antique shop filled with old artifacts. Derek wanders around the store, focusing intently on every detail inside. He eventually approaches the clerk and places an old watch on the counter, offering to buy it. The clerk inspects it and dismissively tells him that the watch is a fake, a cheap replica, not an original. However, the clerk is suddenly surprised to see that the watch is actually ticking. In an instant, Derek backs away from the counter. The watch explodes, blasting the area. Immediately, Derek and a team of masked men storm the shop. One of the men enters the clerk's office, unlocks the door for the rest of the team, and they all descend to the basement, ruthless killing the guards stationed there. It turns out this antique shop is just a front. The basement is actually a hub for illegal operations, including prostitution and drug trafficking. Derek grabs the manager of the facility and demands to know where the money is. The manager insists that he already moved everything to the main headquarters. Derek doesn't believe him. He raises his gun and shoots right next to the manager's ear, grazing him. The manager screams in pain, swearing he isn't lying. Derek simply shifts his aim and fires next to the manager's other ear. Realizing that Derek will continue to torture him until he confesses, the manager breaks. He agrees to show him the location. He leads Derek and his crew to a locker room. There, he opens a secret door hidden behind a large wardrobe. Derek and his men enter and find the hidden room stacked with cash. The manager warns Derek, telling him they have no idea whose money they are stealing. Derek ignores the warning completely, shoots the manager, and finishes him off. Derek and his team immediately start bagging up all the cash. As they leave, Derek tosses a live grenade into the room and locks the door, trapping the remaining people inside. The grenade explodes, killing them all. Sometime later, we see Derek and his accomplices at a new location. The gang leader, Rhodes, arrives. He congratulates them on the success of the operation and tells them he will wire each of them their share, just like always. However, he gives them a strict order. Once they receive their money, they must disappear completely. No one is to contact anyone else ever again. The crew agrees to his terms and begins moving the money bags onto a waiting plane. A female member of the gang, Serena, hands a money bag to Rhodes, telling him it is the last one. Secretly, Rhodes slips a tracking device into the bag and tells her to load it onto the plane. Rhodes shakes hands with the pilot who is transporting the cash to the rendezvous point where they will split it. The pilot takes off, flying toward the meeting spot. However, a severe storm hits. The plane catches fire mid-air and crashes violently into the frozen ice below. 5 months later, we are introduced to a hunter named Harold, living in a remote, isolated cabin in the icy wilderness. When Harold wakes up, the first thing he does is look at a picture of his family. He lights a fire to warm himself and eat. After he finishes, he grabs his bow and arrow and heads out to hunt. He walks across the vast ice until he reaches a specific spot where he sets up his gear and begins ice fishing. While he is fishing, he notices something strange sticking out from under the ice. He moves closer and realizes it is a human hand. Harold breaks the ice around it and pulls a body out of the freezing water. It is the pilot from the crashed plane. Harold looks beside him and spots one of the money bags. He retrieves it, unzips it, and is shocked by the massive amount of cash inside. He looks down into the water and sees the wreckage of the sunken plane. He takes the bag of money and returns to his cave. The next day, we see a police officer named Annie getting ready for work. When she arrives at the station, she meets the police chief, Raleigh. Raleigh introduces her to 2 hunters and tells them they are heading to the lake. Annie refuses to let them pass, warning them that the lake is frozen and dangerous. The men insist on going anyway. One of them speaks to Annie with pure arrogance, telling her that they are tourists who bring a lot of money to this village, so no one can stop them. Annie stays silent and doesn't respond. Raleigh stands by, watching the interaction. He is surprised when Annie walks over to the tourist's car and clamps a boot onto their wheel. Raleigh tries to calm her down, but Annie refuses to listen, stating she is simply enforcing the law. The arrogant man realizes he is lost, apologizes to her, and says he will take his friend and leave. Annie removes the clamp, returns to her patrol car, and Raleigh informs her that a local named Jed has a car stuck in the ice. Annie says she will go help him. At the same time, in a nearby location, a man named Ben is giving a religious lesson. Ben is shocked when he looks up and sees Derek standing in front of him. We learn here that Ben was one of the men who helped steal the money with Derek, but after the heist, he repented and stopped doing anything illegal. Derek tells him that the tracker in the money bag is sending a signal from the nearby lake. This means the $20 million is under the ice. Since Ben is a native of the village, he must help them retrieve it. Ben refuses at first, but Derek reminds him that he is in their debt and has no choice. Ben is forced to agree to be their guide. They head to the car, where Serena and another henchman named Ellis are waiting. They also mention that their sniper, Dax, is waiting on the other side to secure the perimeter. When they arrive at the lake, they notice the tracking signal is moving. Derek is confused and asks Ben if he told anyone about the money. Ben denies it, suggesting the movement could be caused by the water current or that someone found the bag. Meanwhile, Ani arrives at Jed's location. She attaches a tow rope to Jed's car to pull him out. She spots Harold walking toward them. She asks Jed if he knows him. Jed explains that Harold is a poacher who has lived in the village for a long time and is often seen looking for his wife. Ani approaches Harold and asks to see his hunting license. While she is searching his gear, she finds the bag of money. Harold denies the bag is his, claiming he just found it under the ice. Ani arrests him and searches him, but finds no weapons. She calls Raleigh and reports that she has arrested a poacher with a bag full of cash. At that exact moment, Derek and his team arrive. Initially, Ani thinks they are just hunters and tells them the lake is closed. Derek pulls out his phone to show Ani the tracking signal, telling her that she has something that belongs to them. Ani says she doesn't understand what he means. Derek doesn't believe her. He points his gun at her and demands to know about Harold. Ani lies, saying he is just an illegal poacher. Ben searches Ani's car and finds the money bag. Derek asks Ani where the rest of the bags are. Ani insists she knows nothing about it. Derek brings his gun closer, ready to kill her. Suddenly, Harold lunges at Derek, tackling him to the ground. Jed reacts quickly and shoots Derek. Chaos erupts. Harold runs for hide. The gang engages in a shootout with Ani and Jed. Tragically, Serena manages to shoot Jed, killing him. Ani jumps into her car to escape, but it is still tied to Jed's car, so she can't move. Harold rushes over, cuts the rope, and jumps into the trunk with Ani. Serena leaps into the trunk after him, fighting him for the bag. Harold kicks her, shoving her out of the moving car. Serena falls, dropping the money bag, which sinks into the water under the ice. Derek stands up. He survived because he was wearing a bulletproof vest. He wants to chase Ani and Harold to find the rest of the money, but his car is damaged. He orders Ellis to fix it immediately. In the car, Annie asks Harold about the rest of the money. He tells her it is inside the sunken plane. She asks if he is part of the gang. Harold denies it, explaining he lives in a cave near the lake. Annie doesn't believe him. Suddenly, her car engine dies. They get out. Annie ties a long rope around Harold's wrist and the other end around her own. Killers walking on the ice and decides to pursue them. However, the heavy SUV breaks the ice and begins to sink. Ben acts fast, pulling the team out. He throws his belt to Ellis, telling him to stay calm and grab it. Ellis grabs the belt and they pull him to safety just before the car sinks completely. Their teammate, Dax, arrives on a snowmobile. Derek orders him to go after Annie and Harold and capture them. Annie and Harold feel the ice cracking beneath them. Harold tells her they need to run to his cave. They sprint together and reach the cave entrance. They realize Dax is coming. Harold takes out his bow and gives it to Annie, telling her he only has one arrow left. He then takes out bear traps he uses for hunting and sets them up in the snow. Dax arrives and immediately steps into one of the bear traps. He screams and reaches for his gun, but Harold shoots him in the leg with the arrow, knocking him down. They wrestle. Dax grabs Harold by the neck and starts strangling him. Harold pulls the arrow out of Dax's leg and stabs him in the body. The ice breaks, and Harold falls into the water. Dax grabs his gun and shoots into the water, but misses as Harold swims away. Harold resurfaces and stabs Dax in the leg again. Dax strikes back and grabs his weapon, demanding to know where the plane is. Suddenly, Ani rushes in and smashes a bear trap onto Dax's head. Dax collapses and dies instantly. Ani and Harold flee, telling him she knows a secret place in the forest where they can hide. Derek and his team arrive at the scene. Serena goes into shock when she sees Dax dead. Derek hugs her, calms her down, and promises he will find them and take revenge. They move quickly to track Ani and Harold. When they spot them in the forest, they open fire. Ani and Harold escape by wading through the freezing water so they don't leave tracks for the gang to follow. Ben realizes Annie must be a native because she knows how to hide her tracks perfectly. However, Ben knows a shortcut. As they walk, Ben sees a large circle marking on the ground. He warns the team that the area is filled with bear traps and they should go around. Serena ignores him and keeps walking, stepping right into a trap that clamps onto her leg. The team rushes to pry it open and free her. They carry her to an abandoned house, break in, and Derek begins treating her wound. Meanwhile, Annie and Harold reach a cave deep in the mountain. Annie reassures Harold that no one can find them there. She lights a fire. She asks him if he is really looking for his wife, as Jed had mentioned. Harold tells her his story. His wife died of a drug overdose, driven by grief over the death of their only daughter, who died of pneumonia. He was serving in the military at the time. When he returned and learned the news, he fell into deep depression and considered ending his life many times. Back at the abandoned house, Rhodes arrives with backup. Derek informs him they are chasing a cop and a poacher who know where the plane is. Rhodes ignores him and checks on Serena. She is devastated about Dax. Rhodes comforts her, promising they will pay. He then talks to Ellis. He shows Ellis the severed fingers of a former associate who tried to steal from him. He tells Ellis that the associate confessed everything, and he never expected Ellis to be a traitor, especially since Rhodes picked him off the streets. Ellis panics and begs for forgiveness, but Rhodes stabs him to death. He tells his men they will kill the cop and the hunter as soon as they get the location. Ani and Harold leave the cave and run into a man named Oz, the tribe's leader. Oz takes Ani aside and scolds her for bringing Harold here. We learn that Harold's wife was Oz's niece. Oz believes Harold abandoned her, causing her addiction and death. Harold denies this, explaining they loved each other and her addiction happened while he was deployed after their daughter died. Oz refuses to believe him, but agrees to let them hide. The next day, Oz mocks Ani, asking if her hideout is government approved. He tells her she has lost her connection to her ancestors' land and sold herself to the US government. Ani argues she protects her land and people. Oz dismisses her, telling her to take supplies and leave. Harold approaches Oz and explains the gang is looking for a plane full of money. He says he doesn't want the cash, but the tribe could use it. Oz asks if Harold is trying to buy their favor. Harold says no, he is just trying to do the right thing. Suddenly, Raleigh arrives. He tells Ani that backup is on the way and asks her where the plane is. Ani is confused. She never mentioned a plane to Raleigh. She realizes he is working for the gang. Raleigh admits it, revealing he gets a 5% cut of the money. He promises to split his share with her if she talks. Ani refuses. Raleigh pulls a gun, disarms her, forces her and Harold into his car, and drives off. Rhodes and his men are waiting at the rendezvous point. Ben is standing alone. Derek stands next to him and flicks a lighter to smoke. Ben immediately stops him, snatching the lighter and explaining that the ice here is leaking methane gas. It's highly flammable. In Raleigh's car, Harold tells Raleigh he knows where the plane is. To prove it, he says the tracker is in his bag. Raleigh reaches into the bag to grab the tracker, but Harold has hidden a bear trap inside. The trap snaps under Raleigh's hand. He screams in agony, loses control of the car, and flips it onto the ice. Derek sees the crash. Harold breaks the window, crawls out, and helps Ani. Raleigh stumbles out, wounded but holding his gun, ready to kill Harold. Suddenly a shot rings out. Raleigh is shot in the head. It is Serena who killed him. Harold grabs Raleigh's gun and shoots Serena, killing her. Derek shoots Harold in the shoulder, knocking him down. Rhodes approaches. He orders Ben to finish Ani off. Ben refuses, turning to walk away. Rhodes shoots Ben in the back. As Ben falls, dying, he pulls out his lighter, ignites it, and throws it onto the ice toward Rhodes. The methane gas ignites. A massive explosion engulfs the area. Rhodes is burned alive, screaming as the fire consumes him. Harold scrambles up and runs to find Ani. He finds Derek holding her hostage in a boathouse. Derek fires a shot right next to Ani's ear, just like he did to the manager at the start, to force Harold to talk. Ani manages to break free. Harold tackles Derek. They fight brutally. In the end, Harold stabs Derek in the neck, killing him. In the final scene, Ani goes to Oz. She reports that the police recovered the plane, but they only found $4 million, not 20. She implies that Harold took the rest of the money to build a large hospital for the tribe. Oz stays silent. Ani walks over to see her daughter, who is fishing with Harold. The girl runs to her mother, excited that she is learning to fish. The movie ends.